תודה רבה לחבר הכנסת אוהד טל, וכעת אנחנו עוברים אל אורח הכבוד המיוחד שלנו. מר דיוויד פרידמן שימש כשגריר ארצות הברית בישראל בתקופת נשיאותו של הנשיא טראמפ, ועד היום הוא אחד האנשים המקורבים ביותר אליו. בתקופתו כשגריר קידם תוכניות שונות להחלת ריבונות ישראלית ולביצור ביטחונה של ישראל, והיה מאדריכלי הסכמי אברהם ששינו את פני המזרח התיכון. בעקבות אירועי 7 באוקטובר חידד מר פרידמן את תוכניתו המדינית וניסח אותה בספרו One Jewish State, מדינה יהודית אחת. מר פרידמן הוא מנהיג, איש חזון וידיד אמת של ישראל, ויש לנו את הכבוד והזכות הגדולה שהוא כאן איתנו בערב הזה. נצפה כעת בסרטון מיוחד אודות התוכנית המדינית, ומיד אחריו יעלה ויבוא מר פרידמן.
Hi, I'm Ambassador David Friedman. For 4 years I served as the United States Ambassador to Israel, and I learned a lot. For more than 50 years I have studied Zionism, the Bible, and Jewish history, and I learned even more. I want to share with you what I have learned, especially now at this critical time for Israel and the Jewish people. The massacre committed by Hamas against innocent Israelis on October 7th has brought great trauma to the state of Israel. But it also has brought great clarity. It is this clarity that tells us we have to try something new. It is this clarity that tells us Israel must plan its future on its own and not obsess about what others think. And it is this clarity that compels us to go back to basics, to return to the biblical values and divine covenants that unite the Jewish people. It is this clarity that has inspired me to lead a new movement called One Jewish State. One Jewish State. In these turbulent times, this simple phrase of 3 words must be the guideline for our collective future. Each word of One Jewish State is deeply infused with meaning. One, there's only one country earmarked for the Jewish people, just one, the State of Israel. There are 49 Muslim countries and plenty of Christian, Buddhist, and Hindu countries, but only one Jewish state. This single Jewish state is about the size of New Jersey, and there is a special place for it in this world. Jewish. The Jewish state of Israel is exactly that, Jewish. It is a place where Jewish history was born, where Jewish values were created, and where more Jews live than anywhere else. It is situated on the land given to the Jewish people by God, in the words of the Holy Bible. What are some of the places that make the state of Israel Jewish? Well, let's start right here in Jerusalem, Israel's eternal capital. A capital established by King David some 3,000 years ago to unite the Jewish nation. That gold dome behind me sits on the Temple Mount, purchased by King David as the site of the Holy Temple, as recounted in the books of Samuel and the books of Kings. 2 magnificent temples stood there for almost 1,000 years, many centuries before that dome was built. Going back even further, the rock that sits inside that gold dome is said to be the stone upon which Abraham passed God's test of faith and received God's covenant to this holy land. Speaking of ancient Jewish sites, I must also mention Hebron, from which King David ruled during the first 7 years of his reign. This is where Abraham purchased a burial cave for his wife Sarah. Ultimately, it became the burial place as well for Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Rebekah, and Leah, the Jewish patriarchs and matriarchs. That biblical cave remains today a place of deep prayer and spiritual connection. There are so many other ancient Jewish sites to mention, but for now, I'll just add one. Shiloh. After Joshua brought the Jewish nation across the Jordan River, following their exodus from Egypt, he eventually settled there. The tabernacle, the mobile temple, rested in Shiloh for some 369 years. Here is where the prophet Samuel was born, and Hannah, a childless woman, so yearning for a son or daughter, taught the world how to pray. These holy places and so many more within the land of Israel are living proof of the glorious heritage of the Jewish people. They provide the quintessential Jewish DNA that connects Jews across continents and across generations. This land and the biblical covenants and wisdom emerging from within it are what makes us Jewish. And finally, the last of our 3 words, state. Israel isn't just a place. It is a country with sovereignty over its land and responsibility for its inhabitants. Today, that sovereignty has been called into question by the nations of the world and even by some within Israel. But Israel cannot be Jewish without sovereignty over the places that make it Jewish. We hope that one day, with God's help and with your help, Israel will have complete sovereignty over all of its biblical homeland in a manner that brings peace, prosperity, and essential human dignity to all of Israel's inhabitants. As we begin to reimagine the state of Israel after the horrors, the trauma, and importantly, the clarity brought about by October 7th, let us always remember that this holy ground constitutes the one and only Jewish state. One Jewish state. In this massive world, there must remain room for one Jewish state. Over the next few months, please visit our website and follow our content as we explore this concept in greater depth. Let's work together to make this vision a reality.
אני מתכבדת להזמין את שגריר ארצות הברית בישראל לשעבר, מר דיוויד פרידמן.
Thank you so much. After the awards that we just gave out, I just want to say before I start that to someone who's been here 6 or 7 times since October 7th, but also has spent a fair amount of time from the outside looking in, I just want to say to those people here to the Israelis who live here, what an incredible country you have. You should just be so proud. What Israel endured on October 7th could have broken so many countries. It was so difficult and traumatic and tragic. And while that trauma is still there, and I'm sure that we'll be dealing with the post-traumatic stress for years, and I'm not suggesting that we're done, and of course we have to pray every day for the return of the hostages, but just the way in which this country has stood up and fought for itself, really by itself, and addressed these issues, and where it is today is really miraculous. And it's really a testament, as much as I'd say it's a testament to everybody here, it's really a testament to the generation younger than me. Those who are under 40 or 30, 20, the soldiers, the Miluvimnikim, what their patriotism, their courage, their commitment to this country is just like nothing I've ever seen, and it's just something that I couldn't begin to speak without pointing that out. So kol hakavod to the whole nation of Israel. And one other thing I'll say, because when I'm back in the States, people always say to me, Israel's a mess, it's a wreck, And I just make this analogy, and I hope maybe it helps people understand. So picture two guys on October 6th, and they both have a serious case of cancer. They don't know about it yet, but they both have a serious case of cancer that could kill them. And one guy goes for a checkup, and he finds out that he has this horrible disease. And he starts therapy, and he starts chemotherapy, and he starts radiation. And it's very difficult, and it's very uncomfortable, and he's losing his hair, and he can't get out of bed, and he's tired, and it's just a terrible, terrible year. Meanwhile, the other guy, he doesn't know that he's sick yet. He doesn't know. And he's going about his life for that year, and, nothing's bothering him. Now ask yourself, a year later, your life insurance company, whose life do you want to insure at that point? Who's healthier, right? Who's healthier? And I would suggest to you, the guy who found out what he had, went to the doctor, got treatment, suffered through it, and came out the other end, he's far healthier than the other guy who's allowed the cancer to grow and spread for a year. And that's Israel. Israel is a healthier country today than it was on October 6, 2023. It's paid an enormous price for that health, for that clarity, for that wisdom. Enormous price. Nobody should ever have to pay a price like that.
But it knows who its friends are. It knows who its enemies are. It knows that there is no force in the world that can defeat it, that can push the Jewish people off of this holy ground. And that's something to take away from this event. Again, it's not over. There's still so much more to do. Enemies are still on every one of our borders. But Israel, I believe, with all its trauma, with all its difficulties, and they're massive, is still in a better place today than it was a year ago. So I start with that, a word of optimism. And now I'm going to tell you why I wrote this book. So I wrote this book because of October 7th. That was the first stimulus that got me to write the book. The second thing were the reaction of the Palestinians to what happened on October 7th. 80+ % of the Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria were encouraged and supported. They were exhilarated. They felt good about what Hamas did to the Jewish people. And that was stimulus number 2. And of course, that has continued to today. Just last week, you saw Mahmoud Abbas give this stirring eulogy in favor of Yahya Sinwar. And then the third point was my country, United States, leadership, in the aftermath of October 7th, in the aftermath of the Palestinians all siding with Hamas, decided that the real solution to all of this was a two-state solution. And that was sort of the bridge too far. That was really what got me. So I went to my office for 10 weeks, and I wrote this book. And let me say that the idea for me to listen to the American government say in the aftermath of October 7th, there ought to be a two-state solution, to me was just a level of insanity I never thought I would hear from my own government. Understand, I say this till I'm blue in the face. The experiment of a two-state solution was tried and failed. For 17 years, there hasn't been a Jew living in Gaza. There hasn't been an Israeli soldier in Gaza until just after October 7th. Israelis have done their best not to go back into Gaza. They don't want to go back. It's been left to the Palestinians. What did they do? They took over. What did they do? They had an election. Who did they elect? They elected Hamas. What did Hamas then proceed to do? To terrorize their own people and to terrorize Israel. Billions of dollars went into Gaza since then. Billions, unfortunately, much of it from the United States. They build schools, they build roads, they build business. Did they take advantage of the western-facing Mediterranean beachfront? That is the same beachfront as they have in Tel Aviv? No. Terror tunnels and weapons of mass destruction, that's all they built. That's the Palestinian state. When anybody says to you, there ought to be a Palestinian state, say no. We tried it and it failed. It was Gaza, and look what became of Gaza. No one's going to do it again. We've seen that movie, we're not going back. And this has to be something which people have, at their fingertips, because it's going to come up over and over and over again. So that's the easy part, right? Okay, there can't be a two-state solution. Now what, right? Vacuums can't just leave a vacuum. Vacuums get filled always in Israel, in this area. Whenever there's a vacuum, it gets filled by the wrong people. There was a vacuum in Lebanon. It was filled by Hezbollah. There was a vacuum in Gaza, filled by Hamas. Vacuum in the Sinai, filled by ISIS. Vacuums are not good in the Middle East. So what's the answer? You all know Ohad described my view very, very well. But the question is, how do you get there? How do you get to Jewish sovereignty over the entirety of Judea and Samaria? Let me first tell you, I should just back up with the story of what really convinced me. Because back when I was ambassador, we were toying around with a bunch of different plans that would have resulted in partial Israeli sovereignty over parts of Judea and Samaria, about half of Area C. I remember as we were trying to sell this plan in the White House with a lot of opposition, I remember sitting with President Trump, and he said to me, well, how does this work? I said, well, it starts off as Israel gets sovereignty over half of Area C. He says, well, what about the other half of Area C? I said, well, there's kind of a getting to know you program with the Palestinians, and My guess is that the Palestinians never come to the table, so Israel gets the other half of Area C. He goes, okay, what about areas A and B? Well, that's just going to be, left to the Palestinians. And what's going to happen there? And I said, well, you have to figure it out. And he said, well, isn't this just going to result in, Area A and Area B becoming Gaza? I mean, you're going to cramp in, a couple of million Palestinians, and they got no place to go. They're entirely landlocked. And what have you accomplished? I mean, maybe are you just not creating Gaza, on the other side of the country? And I said, you know what? There's some truth. I mean, look, the reality that occurred to me, and I used to always, I spoke many times to the head of the Shabak when I was the ambassador. He used to say, well, we can't have sovereignty over those areas. And I said, well, aren't you already there? He goes, no, we're not there. I said, well, I'm watching this show Fauda, which suggests to me that you are there. I mean, that you're there under the worst possible circumstances. You're going in there at the time when you're at the most exposed, when it's the most dangerous, going into Jenin, into Ramallah, into Shechem, into Tulkarem, into Kalkilia, and you're going there in the middle of the night and you're putting people's lives at risks. Is that really the way you want to, why not just own it? You can own the whole thing. It's Israeli territory. It's given to the Jewish people by God. Just own it. You'll have a much better chance of keeping it safe. You'll be there. And once you own it, you have something beyond sticks. You have carrots as well as sticks. You have the ability to at least, look, if people want to kill you, kill them first. If they don't want to kill you and they say, find us a path to live in peace, you have the tools to do so once you're the sovereign. And it became clear to me that that's the only path. And what's important to me is this, and I want to share this with you, because I think a lot of people in this room would say, of course Israel has to be the sovereign over Judea and Samaria, because, and I lay this out in much detail in my book, God made a covenant to Abraham, and then to Isaac, and then to Jacob, and then the prophets, whether it's Yirmiyahu or Yeshayahu or Yechezkel, they all foresaw sovereignty of the Jewish people over this land. Isn't that enough? Well, look, it's enough for a lot of people here. It's enough for me. It's enough for others. But, there's another side of this. And this is what I think is different about what this book has to say. If you just care about the Palestinians, let's say you don't like Israel. You don't like Israel at all. You're some student at Berkeley, right? Everything you've heard about Israel is no good. You just care about the Palestinians having a better life. This is the answer for you as well. It's the same answer. It's the same answer whether you think sovereignty should be achieved because it's God's will, or it's the same answer whether you think that the Palestinians should live under the sovereignty of a country that can treat them with respect and dignity and human rights. The point I make, and I wish Israel did a better job of explaining this, because Israel is the only country in the Middle East which has any track record of empowering an Arab minority. There's 20% of Israel is Arab. More than 20% of the students at the most elite universities in Israel are Arab. A dear friend of mine is the former chairman of Bank Leumi. He's a Palestinian Arab Muslim, and he ran the largest bank in Israel. You go into Hadassah Hospital with a broken arm, pretty good chance your arm's going to be set by a Palestinian orthopedist. I mean, Israel knows how to treat human beings, whatever their origin, Christian, Muslim, Druze, Jewish. They know, they have the internal values and the track record of treating everyone with basic human rights and respect. And they're the only party qualified to be sovereign over Judea and Samaria, even if you think the Bible is just some interesting book written by some guy 3,000 years ago. It works on both sides. And what I think is important, because I suspect, from the applause people gave about Donald Trump being elected, I assume this is mostly a crowd that's, moves towards the right or to the center. What we have to do is make the case to people on the left as well. Okay, this is important, because this doesn't work unless there's a meaningful consensus within the state of Israel that supports this. I could go to Donald Trump tomorrow. I go to him tomorrow. I see him every couple of weeks. I could say to him, Mr. President, and hopefully when I say Mr. President, it's Mr. President 47, not just Mr. President 45. But when I say to him, I wrote this book. I have some ideas. I think this is the best outcome for the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, Israeli sovereignty over the entirety of Judea and Samaria, area A, B, and C, get rid of Oslo. We just create a new paradigm. I think it's a great idea. I think it works. What's he going to ask me? Well, what do the Israelis think? And, if he asked me that question today, I'd say, I don't know. And he would say to me, well, if you don't know, come back to me after you find out, because I'm not running the state of Israel. And I'm not getting ahead of the state of Israel. The state of Israel has to make this decision. And then if they come to me, or they come to you, and they say, look, this is what we'd like to do, and this is why we think it's good for the region, why it's good for stability, why it's good for the economy, why it's good for Palestinians and Jews and Christians and Arabs, I'm happy to listen to it. But it's got to come from Israel. And so I'll tell you a story about what makes me optimistic about this. And it's admittedly just an anecdote. But, about a year ago, I'm sitting in Tel Aviv on a high story in a beautiful office building, and I'm meeting with a high-tech entrepreneur who is now trying to make his second $1 billion. And he's there, black pants, black T-shirt. He had an incredible army career, tremendous patriot. He's, as far as I'm concerned, as good a Jew as anybody else. I think, we owe him a great debt of gratitude. And I asked him, after we talked some business, I asked him, what do you think about Judea and Samaria? And he said to me, well, I haven't been there since the army, and I don't want to rule over a bunch of Palestinians who don't like me. I don't want my son to risk his life fighting there. And I said to him, okay, I get it. I said to him, well, are you religious, secular? He goes, look, I'm secular, and, I'm bordering atheist. My parents are Holocaust survivors. I have deep problems with God. I said, okay, I get it. Listen, I didn't have that experience. I'm not judging him. Again, he's done great things for the Jewish people. So I said to him, look, let's pick a place and just tell me what you think. Do you know what happened in Shiloh? And he says to me, I don't think so. I said, well, look, Shiloh is an important place. Joshua took the Jewish people across the Jordan River. 7 years he was in a place called Gilgal, and then he comes to Shiloh. And the tabernacle comes to Shiloh, and the Ark of the Covenant comes to Shiloh. And Shiloh is the Jerusalem of the state of Israel in ancient times, before there was a Jerusalem. And Samuel was born there, and all the tribes came there and were assigned all their territories. And as you saw in the movie, and as Hannah taught the world how to pray. And he said to me, why didn't you taught the world how to pray? And I said, well, she wanted a son, and those days, Israel was a sacrificial society. They made sacrifices. They didn't really know how to pray, and she offered the first prayer, a deeply lyrical, heartfelt prayer for a son. So unusual was it that the high priest, Eli Cohen, thought she was drunk. So I said to him, look, I'm an American. What have I got to do with this? You're an Israeli. You fought for this country. I said, it's up to you. It's not up to me. What do you want to do? Now you have a choice. You can keep Shiloh. You may have to fight for it. You may have to fight for it militarily. You may have to fight for it diplomatically. You may have to fight for it for a while economically, But there'll be some, turbulence. You'll have to deal with it. Or you want to give it away. Understand, if you give it away, the incredible architecture, the incredible archaeology, and the spirit of Shiloh that goes back 3,000 years. You can literally, look at the ground there and understand what Jewish biblical life was like 3,000 years ago. If you give it away, it's all gone. Just picture the movie, Palestinians coming in with pitchforks and tractors and flames and everything, burning everything, destroying everything. Now, if you can watch that movie and it doesn't affect you, okay. But that's what's going to happen. So he says to me, we have to keep it. And I said to him, what do you mean you got to keep it? Why? Just because of the Bible? The Bible, it's a book. He said, it's a book. I said, look, there are other great books out there. I went to, I'm embarrassed to say, I went to Columbia University. They gave us lots of great books to read, when I was there. The Iliad, the Odyssey, all these, He said, yeah, but he says, I don't know who wrote the book. He says, I'm assuming it was written by some guy, but it's our book. This is our book. This is who we are. This is the book that has sustained the Jewish people for 3,000 years. This is why we're here. This is why we're not in Uganda. This is not why we're not someplace else. This is our book. This is who we are. This is our people. And he looks at me, he says, would you give away the Washington Monument? And I said, well, I'm in complete agreement with you, but 10 minutes ago, you were ready to give it all away. Not just Shiloh, everything. And he says to me, I didn't know. It's not something I talk about. It's not something I think about. And now that I thought about it, we can't give it away. I said, you understand, there's Beit El, and there's Hebron, and there's the Mizbeach of Yoshua, and there's 10. He goes, I get it. We can't give it away. And then I said to myself, how do I have this conversation 1 million more times? How do I scale this conversation? And that was why I wrote the book. That was the main reason I wrote the book, to somehow at least get this in writing so people can read it. Look, Israel's a very diverse country. Not everybody's on the right, not everybody is religious, not everybody, but I believe that the overwhelming majority of the Jewish people in Israel appreciate their history, love their history, embrace their history, and don't want to jeopardize. They understand the unique role that Israel plays in the world. It's the only place in the world where the Bible can be brought back to life. There are 2,000 copies of the Bible bought on Amazon every hour. Okay, every hour. 20 million Americans buy a new Bible every year. It matters. It matters. The Declaration of Independence is a unique document. Why? Because it said that the rights of human beings don't come from the king, they don't come from the Congress, they come from God. Right? Certain rights, unalienable rights from our Creator. And where does that? Where does that come from? Where did the Creator inform the founders of America where these rights came from? They were all Bible scholars. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah dvar Hashem Yerushalayim. All these great Judeo-Christian values come from Jerusalem, all of Jerusalem. And so that's what this book is about. It's about understanding that whether you're on the right, whether you're on the left, whether you're in the middle, whether you value national security as your primary national objective, whether you value faith as your primary objective, whether it's economics, whether it's geopolitics, whatever it is, whatever gets you up in the morning, however you process your information on Israel, this is the plan for you. This works for everybody. Now, look, there are challenges, okay? It costs money, right? For Israel to absorb, Palestinians into their country, it costs money. However they're classified, we need help. We need to make this part of an expanded Abraham Accords. There's going to be turbulence. There's going to be ongoing terror from the same place that we're trying to absorb. It's going to take time. Israel's going to have to, begin to separate, but it'll have the tools to do so, separate the ones that want to kill us from the ones that want to live with us. It'll take time, okay, but at least we'll have the tools to do so. You have to figure out the governance. We have a nation-state law in Israel. Thank God it was passed. It took a long time to pass it, but it was passed. When I was the ambassador, a lot of people didn't like it, but it's now a basic law. The collective rights of self-determination in the land of Israel belong to the Jewish people. Okay, that's there. That's a basic law that has to be kept. This has to always be a Jewish state, and have to be governance provisions to make sure that it's always a Jewish state. At the same time, there's also a basic law of human dignity. Right? Every human being, not Jewish, every human being living in this land is entitled to certain basic human rights. We have to thread that needle. Okay, it's a challenge. It requires some serious thinking. And as I said at the beginning, there has to be a consensus. You don't rush, get yourself 61 votes in the Knesset and announce it the next day. This is too important. This has to last forever. And it has to be done with the support of at least, whatever it is, 60, 70%, some large percentage of the Jewish people in Israel. But I think we can get there. And I think this trajectory, we have to get on this track. We have to move forward on this track. It doesn't matter whether it's a year or 2 years or 3 years. As long as we kill the two-state solution, we put that in the dustbin of history, we nail that into the coffin and bury it. And then we move forward with this and we do it right. Carefully, thoughtfully, with support from the United States, which I believe we will get, with support from the Gulf, which I believe we can get, with support from the world. As I said this many times, when Israel respects itself and the incredible biblical mission that it's on, the world's going to respect Israel. I mean, we don't have to. If you want to just kind of shut up a lot of these crazy people on college campuses, the easiest response, you have to argue about what a great country Israel is and how it's got such a great human rights program. Those arguments never end. If you really want to end the discussion, you say, you got a problem with this? Take it up with God, okay? Just it's not, I didn't write the Bible. Take it up with God. God gave us this land. You think it's a mistake? Talk to him. Don't bother me. And I think that kind of ends these discussions on the right path. So anyway, I've taken up too much of your time. I'm sorry, but we're going to also have a conversation now. But thank you for being here. I hope this is just the beginning of a very, very important national conversation in Israel. I think it will spill over into America as well. I hope you'll agree with me, whether you read the book in English or in Hebrew, I hope you'll agree with me, it makes sense. And I'll conclude with the words of Mike Pompeo, who wrote the foreword to the book. Why should anybody be surprised that fulfilling the word of God achieves the best outcome for all the inhabitants of this land? Makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much.